The lease had come to an end, yet my landlord, a man of African descent, had other intentions in mind. Once upon a time, in the shadows of trust, a tale unfolded, one of betrayal and heartache. It was a story woven with the threads of deception, where love was tested and loyalty shattered. The echoes of whispered secrets lingered, revealing the raw and painful truth of infidelity. This is a narrative that delves deep into the complexities of human emotions, exploring the fragile boundaries of commitment and the consequences of. I recall the sensation of his hands resting on my hips, strong and unyielding, as if they possessed me entirely. The scent of perspiration intertwined with inexpensive cologne, the creaking of the bed frame that I loathed, and the way I sank my teeth into the pillow to muffle my cries. All of it remains etched in my memory, like a haunting reverie. That night transformed the course of everything. Uncertainty loomed over me, a shadowy blend of survival, betrayal, and perhaps something even more sinister. All I understood was that once it transpired, there was no turning back. Greetings, everyone. I truly appreciate your presence and engagement. Your unwavering support as a subscriber means the world to me. You are the driving force behind the growth of this space. To all the new and returning viewers who have yet to subscribe, I extend my heartfelt gratitude for your presence here. Your anticipation for hitting that subscribe button is palpable. It serves as the very fuel that propels us onward. Once you've absorbed this tale, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments below. I long to know the depths of your thoughts. Allow me to transport you to a different time. I am known as Rachel. I have reached the age of 32 years. Having been born and raised in Kentucky, I found myself relocating to Atlanta, Georgia, following my divorce, with the hope of beginning anew. Before the pandemic, I dedicated my days to teaching English in high school. However, when the school faced budget cuts and had to part ways with some of us, I found myself among those who were let go. Initially, I relied on my savings, sought employment, and endeavored to keep my head above water. Yet, as time wore on, my bank account dwindled while the bills continued to arrive. I secured a modest two-bedroom apartment nestled within a vibrant working-class community. A facade of decency belied the crumbling reality within. Darius, my landlord, stood tall and broad-shouldered, a man in his early 40s with a commanding presence. He resided on the ground floor, consistently donned snug black t-shirts that accentuated his chest, and possessed a subtle, contemplative aura. He exhibited neither warmth nor malice. He existed in that moment, an undeniable presence that I had already fallen behind on my rent twice. On the third occasion, I realized I could no longer offer any justification. I found myself devoid of funds, insufficient to cover even half. As I rapped gently on his door one Friday evening, I felt a surge of hope that I could articulate my thoughts, perhaps plead for a few more days of grace. He swung the door open, clad only in sweatpants and a glinting gold chain. His gaze swept over me, lingering from head to toe, and in that moment, I became acutely conscious of the delicate fabric of my tank top. "I apologize, Darius," I said. "I required just a bit of time, until the coming week. I am exerting every effort within my reach." He rested against the doorframe. "Your words have echoed for 3 weeks now. I am aware. I merely—" He interrupted me. "Step inside." With a moment of uncertainty, I crossed the threshold. The scent of leather and tobacco lingered in his apartment. The room was shrouded in a soft glow, the flickering images of a basketball game dancing across the screen. He strolled into the kitchen, filled a glass with his chosen beverage, and then faced me, his expression devoid of any discernible emotion. "You are well beyond the grace period now. I have the power to remove you from this place." A wave of dread washed over me. I inclined my head in acknowledgement. "I am aware." He approached me, drawing near enough that I found myself tilting my head back to meet his gaze. Yet, perhaps an alternative path exists. I ought to have stepped away. I ought to have declined. Yet the mere idea of resting in my car, of lacking a place to call home, filled me with dread. His fingers brushed against my chin, a gentle yet deliberate gesture. "Rachel, you possess a remarkable beauty that captivates all who behold you." It would be disingenuous of me to claim that I had not observed. I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief, and my breath hitched in my throat. He leaned closer and murmured, Desperately do you wish to remain here?" I remained silent. I was not obliged to. He glimpsed the truth reflected in my gaze. That evening, I exchanged my physical form for the price of shelter. I reassured myself that it was merely a singular occurrence. I would rise again, secure employment, and erase it from my memory. Yet that night unveiled a portal I found impossible to shut. As his lips met mine, a wave of shame coursed through my skin, igniting a fire within. I found myself drawn into an abyss, where shadows of longing intertwined with the weight of remorse and urgency. He brought me to that worn couch, silent and unhesitating, as if words were unnecessary. He understood that my refusal was not an option. He possessed a rugged demeanor. He held the reins firmly. In a peculiar manner, I allowed him to exist as he was that I in the aftermath. I found myself enveloped in silence, my garments a disheveled mess, tears stinging my eyes. He struck a match, inhaled deeply, then released the smoke into the air, casually stating, "Your rent is taken care of this month." A primal urge surged within me, begging for release in the form of a scream. Emotion welled up within me, threatening to spill over in tears. With a simple nod, I gathered my clothes and walked away. In the days that followed, I found myself enveloped in a haze, endlessly revisiting the scene in my thoughts, the manner in which he claimed me, the way I yielded, the intensity, the embarrassment. I averted my gaze as we passed each other. Yet he did not steer clear of my gaze. He wore a smirk each time our eyes met. A transformation stirred within me. A threshold had been breached, and retreat was no longer an option. Little did I realize at that moment that this was merely the beginning. This was merely the dawn of something greater. Darius harbored ambitions. What unfolded next caught me completely off guard. Following that initial evening with Darius, I believed our paths would never cross again. I intended to steer clear of him, concentrate on my job applications, and act as if nothing had transpired. Yet, the act of pretending cannot alter the essence of reality. It merely postpones the inevitable harm. In my experience, the damage unfolded in layers: shame, hidden truths, and an unacknowledged craving that lingered in the shadows. Darius had transcended the mere existence of a lantern. He transformed into a specter, lingering over each fleeting moment of my existence. Each time I emerged from my apartment, an unsettling sensation washed over me, as if his gaze lingered upon me. Not in a way that suggests romance. In a manner that conveys ownership, as if he possessed me entirely now. The subsequent week, I found myself preparing for a job interview at a quaint local diner. Nothing extravagant, merely a stepping stone to regain my footing. Clad in a long-sleeved blouse, I tucked my hair behind my ears, striving to persuade the manager of my reliability. Yet, my mind lingered on Darius's hands, the warmth of his breath against my neck, and how I surrendered to him as if I were merely a comforting space for him to inhabit. I just managed to get through the interview. 2 days later, as I strolled back from the grocery store, I caught sight of him perched upon the most peculiar object in the world. "You got the job?" he inquired, remaining seated. I nodded, holding the brown paper bag tightly against my chest. "I begin on Monday," he offered a smile. "Excellent. The time has come once more for the rent to be paid, as the deadline approaches next week." There was a moment of uncertainty. "I shall settle it. This time, I shall possess it." He chuckled gently. There is no need for deception in our conversation. A primal urge to scream welled up within me. I felt compelled to convey to him that I was not the woman he imagined. Yet perhaps I truly was. As he inclined his head toward his apartment and beckoned me to come upstairs, I found myself compelled to follow Diane that moment. He abandoned any facade of gentleness. He positioned me over the counter, lifted my skirt, and made it clear what I had consented to. Afterward, he strolled away as if I were merely a service he had purchased, and in a sense, I suppose I perched on the edge of his kitchen stool, trembling, filled with humiliation, disgust, and an unexpected thrill. That was the aspect one despised the most. The ensuing weeks melded into one another. IT settled into a familiar pattern. I would tap gently on his door, or at times, he would rattle the knocker on mine. Silence enveloped us, devoid of words or glances, just a primal encounter that ultimately left me feeling hollow and exploited. He never compelled me, not in a physical sense. Yet he understood the depths of my dread, the unforgiving street, the humiliation of eviction, the daunting prospect of beginning anew. The influence he wielded over me intensified. He began to appear unexpectedly. On one occasion, he arrived at my apartment while I was engaged in a Zoom call with a prospective employer. He strode directly to the bedroom, and I trailed behind like a well-trained companion. Once he had finished, he fastened a zipper and remarked, "Keep your door unlocked." My feelings towards him were nothing short of loathing. Yet, my disdain for myself ran deeper, and so it was one fateful evening that an event transpired, shattering the delicate illusion that had been carefully woven. A call came through from my former husband, Andrew. Nearly a year had passed since our last conversation. His voice carried a sense of distance, tinged with weariness. "I heard you're in Atlanta now," he remarked. "I have been attempting to get in touch with you." I took a deep breath. "What is it that you desire?" "I have something important to share with you. There is a certain essence to your apartment building." My heart came to a sudden halt. "What are you referring to?" With a heavy breath, he let out a sigh. "It is not conducted over the phone. Would it be possible for us to arrange a meeting?"
"No."
I ended the call. Yet his words lingered in my mind, akin to a stubborn nail jutting through a floorboard. What was his intention? How could he possibly have known about my building? Later that night, Darius returned to my apartment once more. This time he arrived with a bottle of wine. He settled onto my couch, filled 2 glasses, and regarded me with a new gaze. "You once held your head high," he remarked. "What became of that girl?" I averted my gaze. "She finds herself in a state of financial hardship now." He let out a hearty laugh.
"No."
"She is in the process of acquiring knowledge. You are discovering your value." His words pierced through me, for within the depths of my being, I harbored a lingering dread that he might indeed be correct. I found myself in a state of transformation. The Rachel who once stood with grace, who cherished poetry, red wine, and leisurely strolls through bookstores, was gradually fading from view. He drew me onto his lap, and I surrendered to the moment. My body complied while my soul cried out in anguish. Following that fateful evening, I found myself weaving tales to my friends. I mentioned to them that I was casually seeing someone new. I refrained from revealing that it was my landlord, that I refrained from revealing that it was not love. The diner position provided some assistance, yet the compensation fell short. The cost of rent continued to escalate. The cost of groceries was quite high. Darius ceased his requests for money entirely. He requested alternatives, fresh rolls, revised guidelines, and different eras, times, in the stillness of the night. Occasionally, while I indulged in the warmth of my shower, I began to secure my door. He began to pound on it with increasing intensity. And then arrived the ultimate transformation. One morning, I discovered a manila envelope quietly nestled beneath my door. Within lay a collection of photographs. Grainy, monochrome images capture my form, bare and bent, glancing back with eyes half-lidded. Silence lingered in the air, devoid of any note or explanation. Only a single message, hastily scrawled in crimson ink. "You're not alone in facing this kind of rent situation." My stomach churned with unease. I released the envelope and recoiled as if it had seared my skin. I was not alone in this. Darius had traversed this path previously, most likely continuing with it. And now, another soul was aware. Eyes were upon me. I believed I could bear the weight of the shame. Yet, I was on the brink of discovering that shame is merely the beginning of a deeper journey. Deceit pierces the soul profoundly, and there I stood, on the precipice of betrayal, as someone prepared to plunge a knife into my back. I gazed at the envelope resting on the floor as if it were a source of danger, its presence almost palpable in the air around me. My hands quivered, my heart pounding fiercely within my chest. The message conveyed, that you are not alone in bearing this burden of rent, served as more than a mere warning. A moment of profound discovery unfolded before me. It shattered a part of my very being. On that fateful day at work, I found myself in a series of unfortunate events. A splash of coffee landed squarely on a customer's lap, a tray of dishes slipped from my grasp, and my manager's voice rang out in frustration. Yet, nothing could rival the tempest brewing within my thoughts. I had endured the sting of betrayal, the weight of humiliation, the shadow of degradation. Yet, the most troubling revelation was that I had not been solitary in my plight. The man I once perceived as powerful, dominant, and in control revealed himself to be a predator. A motif, a leech drawing sustenance from despair. I was ordinary. I found myself entwined in a cycle, and there was a knowing presence. As the evening wore on, I lingered until the diner shuttered its doors, taking the longer route home, lost in contemplation of the person I had transformed into. A mature woman diminished to barter her body for a roof over her head, and now, images of me rested in the grasp of unfamiliar faces. Upon returning to my apartment, I discovered that the door stood ajar. That marked the beginning of my understanding. I entered the room to find Darius sprawled on my couch, legs splayed, as if he were the master of the domain. "You really ought to start locking your door," he remarked. I folded my arms across my chest. "Did you leave behind those photos?" For a fleeting moment, a look of confusion crossed his face. Then he let out a hearty laugh. "Which photographs are you referring to?" I snatched the envelope from the kitchen counter and hurled it in his direction. "These." He leafed through them, utterly unfazed. "This doesn't resonate with me, that I have no need to tiptoe in the shadows. You approach with intent." His calmness filled me with disdain. How resolute. "Yet, someone has taken them," I remarked. "Another soul is aware." He offered a nonchalant shrug. "Perhaps one of my tenants. Perhaps one belonging to you." Did I end that moment? The realization dawned upon me. I was not alone. "How many women have you subjected to this?" I insisted. He arched an eyebrow. "Are you in need of a figure?" I averted my gaze. My chest throbbed with an intensity that threatened to burst forth. "You ought to feel grateful," he added. "You possess more than many others." I tightened my grip, my fists balling up in determination. Words eluded me. With a gentle push, I approached the door and swung it open. "Leave now." He rose, each movement measured and intentional. "Do you believe you can exclude me? Following all that has transpired, I shall fulfill my obligation to pay the rent. In currency. Henceforth, should you dare to approach me once more, I will not hesitate to involve the authorities." That caused him to hesitate. "Would you truly go that far?" Indeed, he wore a sly smile. "You remain unaware of the identity of the person behind those photographs. Perhaps it wasn't my doing, perhaps it had nothing to do with you, after all. Leave now." He departed. Yet I was aware that this was far from the conclusion. Not with a person such as Darius. 2 days later, the detonation arrived. A knock echoed through the stillness, marking the beginning of an unexpected turn of events. As I swung the door ajar, a woman emerged from the shadows, poised and waiting. Statuesque, with deep hues and an air of sophistication, Tasha introduced herself, another tenant in the building. "I thought you ought to be aware," she remarked. "One is never truly solitary." We settled onto my couch, and she began to share her tale, strikingly similar to my own. Job lost. Rent is overdue. The proposal from Darius. She had immersed herself in it for months. And she was acquainted with others. She revealed to me a group chat displayed on her phone. 5 women. Everything originates from this structure, each burdened by the same disgraceful truth. "Yet now we have reached the end," she declared. "We shall make our way to the police. Are you joining us or not?" In the stillness of that night, I found myself enveloped in silence. I reflected on the moments I had wept in solitude within the confines of my bathroom. The moments when I found myself engulfed in self-loathing, and the darkness. Darius seized what he desired, oblivious to my unspoken needs. I incline my head in agreement. Indeed, I am in. 3 weeks were spent in the meticulous collection of all that was needed. Communications, images, declarations. Tasha had already consulted with a lawyer on a Thursday morning. The police conducted a raid. Darius was pulled from his unit in handcuffs, bare-chested, reminiscent of the very first moment I laid eyes on him. The end had come, yet the damage remained unscathed. Once the tale unfolded, my employment slipped away. Whispers floated through the air at the diner. The neighbors watched intently. Some referred to me as courageous. Some referred to me as foolish. Once more, Andrew's voice echoed through the line. This time, he laid bare all the details, revealing how he had been aiding Tasha from afar. He had caught wind of murmurs surrounding Darius, pursued him, and came to the realization that I resided in that very building. That was the reason he endeavored to caution me. It caused more pain than it provided relief. I gathered my belongings and departed from Atlanta. Returning to North Carolina, I embraced a fresh start with a new position at a quaint community library. There are still nights when I awaken drenched in sweat. At times, I find myself steering clear of mirrors, yet I find myself on the path to healing. This tale does not revolve around love. This tale does not revolve around desire. This tale explores the depths of desperation and its transformative power over a woman. The transformation of poverty into a tool of power for those who wield it unjustly. Yet, it is equally a narrative of seizing that power once more. Every woman who has ever felt that her body was the sole measure of her value, remember this. You possess an immeasurable worth that transcends the physical.